My mom looked me straight in the eye and said, "We're not celebrating your kid's birthday. He's not really part of us." And when my cousin added, "Save the cake, she'll be divorced again by next month," I realized I wasn't just fighting for respect anymore. I was fighting for my son. You might think that no mother would say something like that, and at least not out loud, but mine did, in front of my entire family, at my son's 7th birthday dinner. And I said nothing. Not at first, but before the night ended, my little boy stood on a chair and said something that changed everything. Let me tell you what happened. My name is Lena Carter. I'm 34. I never thought I'd be the single mom stereotype my family always whispered about. But here I am. A year ago, I left a toxic marriage. It took everything out of me, my savings, my health, my hope for a while. But what it didn't take was my love for my son, Owen. He's 7 years old, sweet, smart, and a little too wise for his age. Divorce affects kids in ways you can't always see, but Owen stayed strong. For me, for us. We moved out of the house I had tried so hard to make a home, into a tiny apartment with mismatched furniture and paper-thin walls. Still, Owen would tell me, "Mom, this place is cozy. I like it better here." I knew what he meant. No yelling, no tension, just the two of us, figuring life out. But some things you can't escape, like my family. My mom, Barbara, is the kind of person who cares more about how things look than how they feel. She smiled at our wedding but told me afterward, "Well, at least now you'll have a man to keep you in line." When I left my husband, she barely hid her disgust. For her, divorce was failure. To me, staying would have been worse. My dad, Jack, is quieter. He avoids conflict like it's a full-time job. If Barbara makes a cruel comment, he just sighs and disappears behind a newspaper or a football game. Then there's my cousin Haley, younger than me, bitter beyond her years. She's always had this knack for finding people's weak spots. She never married and resents anyone who seems happy, even for a moment. My brother Evan's the only one who gets it. He texted me after my divorce, "I'm proud of you. You did the right thing." But at family events, he clams up. No one crosses Mom. When Owen's 7th birthday came around, I wanted to make it special. Not big, we couldn't afford that, just meaningful. He asked for one thing, a dinner with family. "I want Grandma and Grandpa and Uncle Evan and Cousin Haley to come," he said. He still loved them, even if they didn't always show it back. So I called my mom. "We can do a small dinner," she said flatly, "but don't expect me to throw a party for that child." That child? My child. I almost canceled, but Owen was excited. He made little invitations with markers and stickers, wrote everyone's name carefully. "Will they like it?" he asked, beaming. I kissed his forehead. "They'll love it, sweetheart." I wish I'd known what was coming. The night of the dinner, I dressed Owen in his favorite blue sweater. He looked so proud. "It's my birthday dinner," he kept saying. We brought a homemade chocolate cake, his favorite, decorated with 7 candles. When we arrived, the house felt colder than usual. Barbara barely greeted us. Haley smirked when she saw the cake. During dinner, Owen chatted happily. He didn't notice the icy looks. I forced myself to smile. For him. And then, as I brought the cake to the table, Barbara stood up. "We're not celebrating," she announced, her voice sharp. "He's not really part of us." I froze. The room went silent. Owen's eyes flicked to me, confused. Before I could speak, Haley laughed and said, "Save the cake. She'll be divorced again by next month anyway." I looked at my father. He stared at his plate. Evan opened his mouth, then shut it. I wanted to scream, to take Owen and run. But then I saw my son, calm, steady, watching. And before dessert was served, he tugged my sleeve and whispered, "Mom, can I say something after cake?" I nodded, my heart breaking. What he said next, what my 7-year-old son said in front of that room, was something I will never forget. I wasn't always someone who kept her mouth shut at family dinners, but becoming a single mom changes you. You pick your battles. You learn when silence is the only thing standing between your child and more pain. A year before that dinner, I thought I had the life I was supposed to have. Married, homeowner, mother, checking all the boxes. But the man I married wasn't the man I thought he was. It started small, snide comments, put-downs behind closed doors. Then came the control, the shouting. The nights I locked myself in the bathroom, Owen clinging to my leg, tears soaking my shirt. I stayed longer than I should have, thinking I could fix it. But one night, when Owen whispered, "Mommy, I think you're sad all the time," something in me broke. I packed a suitcase and left. No plan, no money, no backup. Just my son and a promise to myself. He will never grow up thinking this is normal. We moved into a tiny apartment across town. It wasn't much, a walk-up with squeaky floors and a kitchen barely big enough for the two of us. But it was ours. Owen adjusted better than I did. Kids are resilient like that. He painted drawings for the walls, picked flowers from the park to put in jelly jar vases. "Mom," he said once, placing a wilting daisy by my bed, "our new house is full of love." It nearly wrecked me. My parents, well, they didn't see it that way. Barbara made her feelings clear. "You're making a mistake. No child needs a broken home. You should have stuck it out for Owen. Never mind that the so-called home was broken long before I left." Dad, as usual, said little. "You know how your mother is," he told me quietly one afternoon. "Don't stir things up." But my brother Evan got it. "Proud of you, Lena," he texted the night I moved. "You did the right thing. If you need anything, call me." I didn't call him much. He has his own life, and our family has a way of pulling people under. Then there was my cousin Haley. She'd always envied me in her own way, snarky in high school when I got a scholarship, eye-rolling at my wedding. Now she seemed delighted to watch me fall. "So what's next, Lena? Boyfriend number 2? Maybe a new tattoo to match?" I ignored her. I had bigger things to focus on, like Owen. His birthday was coming up. We didn't have much, but I wanted it to feel special. "What do you want this year, love?" I asked him one night as we snuggled on the couch. "I want dinner with Grandma and Grandpa and Uncle Evan and Cousin Haley, all of us together." I swallowed hard. I knew what that meant. I knew it wouldn't be easy. But how could I say no? "Okay," I smiled. "We'll have a nice dinner. I'll make your favorite cake." He beamed. Calling my mom was the hardest part. "A dinner? Fine, but don't expect me to host a party for that child." That child? She said it like he was a stranger. "It's just a family dinner, Mom," I said quietly. "Well, don't bring drama into my house." Owen didn't sense the tension. He made little invitations out of construction paper and stickers. "Look, Mom," one for each person. He even wrote, in his wobbly 7-year-old handwriting, "Thank you for coming to my birthday." I almost cried when I read them. The night before the dinner, Owen helped me bake the cake. Chocolate with fudge frosting, his favorite. "We'll make it extra yummy," he said, licking the spatula. "You're my best helper," I told him. "And you're my best mom," he whispered. I wanted that night to be good for him. I really did. But as I dressed Owen in his blue sweater and loaded the cake into the car, a pit formed in my stomach. "Mom, will they like the cake?" he asked, buckling in. "They'll love it, sweetheart," I lied. I glanced at the mirror. My eyes looked tired, hollow. But I smiled for Owen. "Ready?" I asked. "Ready," he chirped. Driving to my parents' house, I kept thinking, just get through it. Smile for Owen, keep the peace. But nothing prepared me for what would actually happen at that dinner table, and certainly not for what my son would say by the end of the night. When we pulled into my parents' driveway that evening, Owen bounced in his seat. "We're here," he grinned. "I'm so excited, Mom." I forced a smile. "Me too, love." But inside, my chest felt tight. My fingers gripped the steering wheel longer than they needed to. "Ready to carry the cake?" I asked. "Yep," he said proudly, holding the covered tray in both hands. We walked up to the door together. Owen rang the bell, standing tall in his little blue sweater. Barbara opened the door with a pinched smile. "Come in," she said, stepping aside. No hug, no greeting for Owen. "Hi, Grandma," he said brightly. "Mm-hmm," she replied, already walking toward the kitchen. I caught Owen's eyes. He looked confused for a second, but quickly shook it off. Kids are hopeful like that. Inside, the house felt cold. Not physically, but emotionally. The living room lights were dim. The table was set, but there were no decorations, no balloons, nothing that suggested this was a birthday dinner. Evan was already there, sitting stiffly at the table. He gave me a sympathetic glance and mouthed, "Hey." Jack sat in his recliner, pretending to be absorbed in the evening news. Then Haley walked in, dressed like she was going out to a club, phone in hand. "Look who's here," she said with a smirk. "Little Mr. Birthday Boy." "Hi, Cousin Haley," Owen said cheerfully. She gave him a tight smile and rolled her eyes when he looked away. We sat down to eat. Barbara served the meal without a word about Owen's birthday. Owen tried to make conversation. "Grandpa, guess what? I'm learning to tie my shoes super fast." Jack glanced up briefly. "That's nice, buddy," he muttered. Owen beamed anyway. "Grandma, I made you a card," he said, pulling a carefully folded piece of paper from his pocket. Barbara didn't even open it. "Put it on the counter," she said, taking a sip of wine. My heart ached, but I swallowed my anger. "Don't ruin this for him," I told myself. "Just get through it." Dinner dragged on. Haley whispered snide comments to Barbara, just loud enough for me to hear. "She'll probably move back in next month crying about another man." "Mm-hmm," Barbara replied. "Some people never learn." Owen kept trying, talking about his favorite books, the cake we made, how much he loved school. I watched him, this little boy who wanted so badly to be loved by this family, and they gave him nothing. After the plates were cleared, I stood up to bring the cake. "Owen, want to help me with the candles?" I asked. "Yes," he said, bouncing over. We lit the 7 little candles together. His eyes sparkled. "Ready?" I whispered. "Ready!" He beamed. I carried the cake to the table. Owen followed beside me, practically vibrating with excitement. And then, just as I set it down, Barbara stood. "We're not celebrating," she said coldly. "He's not really part of us." The room went still. Owen froze. His smile vanished. My hands trembled. My throat tightened. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Haley laughed. "Save the cake," she said mockingly. "She'll be divorced again by next month anyway." Jack said nothing. Evan looked down at his lap. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab Owen and leave. But then I looked at my son. He wasn't crying. He wasn't scared. He looked calm, thoughtful. He tugged my sleeve. "Mom," he whispered, "can I say something after cake?" My heart pounded. "Of course," I whispered, barely holding it together. I cut the cake with shaking hands, serving slices in silence. Owen watched everyone carefully, like he was studying them, like he was seeing them, really seeing them, for the first time. I watched him too, amazed by his composure. Something was building in him. I could feel it. And somehow, I knew, whatever he was about to say, it mattered, more than anything I could have said. As we all sat in that cold, heavy silence, with birthday cake untouched in front of us, I realized this wasn't just about me anymore. This was about my son, about what he would remember, about the message we were sending him, and soon, very soon, he would send a message of his own. As I sat at that table, slicing cake with trembling fingers, I kept glancing at Owen. He was quiet now. No more cheerful chatter, no more bright smiles. But there was something in his eyes, a calmness, a clarity, that caught my breath. "Mom, can I say something after cake?" His words echoed in my mind. What did he want to say? Was he going to cry? Was he angry? I didn't know. All I knew was that my 7-year-old son had just shown more composure than anyone else in that room, including me. "Of course," I'd whispered, my voice barely steady. As I passed out slices of cake, the room remained awkwardly silent. Barbara was back in her seat, arms crossed, her face set in stone. Jack stared at his untouched slice, avoiding eye contact. Evan sat stiffly, looking between me and Owen, clearly uncomfortable. And Haley, still smirking, scrolled on her phone as if none of it mattered. I could feel my pulse in my ears. My stomach churned. I looked down at Owen sitting beside me, legs swinging under the table. He calmly took a bite of cake. Then he wiped his mouth on a napkin, pushed back his chair slightly, and looked at me again. "Now, Mom?" he asked quietly. I swallowed hard. "If you're ready," I said, gently touching his hand. He nodded. And then, without hesitation, he stood. Not just stood. He climbed onto his chair. The entire room seemed to freeze. "Owen, what are you doing?" Barbara snapped. "Sit down, kid," Haley added, rolling her eyes. But Owen ignored them. He looked around the table, at each face, slowly, calmly, as if taking a final mental picture. Then, in a clear, steady voice that carried across the silent room, he spoke. I just wanted to say thank you. Everyone blinked, confused. Thank you all, he continued, for showing me exactly who you are. The room went dead quiet. I'm only 7, Owen said, but even I know when people don't want you around, and when they say mean things about you or your mom. My heart stopped. I held my breath. But that's okay, he said, voice unwavering, because now I know. Me and my mom, we don't need to be here. We don't need to sit with people who don't love us. We have each other, and we have people who do love us. That's enough for me. The silence that followed was deafening. Barbara looked stunned, her mouth slightly open. Jack's face was pale, his gaze fixed on his plate. Haley blinked rapidly, her smirk gone. Evan stared at Owen like he was seeing him for the first time. I wanted to cry. I wanted to leap out of my chair and hug my son so tightly he'd never feel this kind of hurt again. But I didn't move. I let him have his moment. He deserved it. After a long, weighted pause, Owen looked straight at me. "Can we go now, Mom?" he asked softly. I nodded, tears threatening to spill over. "Yes, love. We're leaving." I stood, lifting my purse with shaking hands. Barbara finally spoke, her voice brittle. "You're really going to walk out after this scene?" I turned to her, calm but firm. "No, Mom. We're walking out because of the scene you created." Evan finally found his voice. "They shouldn't have had to say anything at all," he said quietly, looking at Barbara and Haley. But I didn't wait for more. I took Owen's hand, and together we walked out of that cold, heavy house. As soon as we reached the car, I knelt beside him and pulled him into my arms. "Owen, I'm so proud of you." He hugged me tightly. "I just wanted them to know, Mom, so they can't pretend anymore." I kissed his forehead, tears falling freely now. "You are the bravest boy I know." "I have you, Mom," he whispered. "That's all I need." "And you have me," I whispered back. "Always." As I started the car and pulled away from that house, a weight I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying began to lift. My son had just taught me something I hadn't been able to teach myself. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stand tall, even when others want to tear you down. And sometimes, the smallest voice in the room can be the one that finally tells the truth. The night air was cool as we drove away from my parents' house. I kept one hand on the wheel, the other gripping Owen's small fingers. I didn't want to let go. Neither of us said much at first. The silence wasn't awkward. It was a shared, sacred quiet. I glanced at him in the rearview mirror. He looked calm, steady, braver than any 7-year-old should ever have to be. "You okay, love?" I finally asked softly. Owen nodded. "Yeah, Mom. I just didn't want them to think they could say those things and it'd be fine." His voice was so sure, so wise. Tears welled in my eyes again. "You were so strong tonight, Owen," I said, my voice trembling. "I am more proud of you than I can ever say." "I'm proud of you too, Mom," he replied. "You didn't yell or cry. You were brave too." And just like that, my heart broke open. Not with sadness, but with the deepest kind of love. He saw me. He understood. When we got home to our tiny apartment, Owen kicked off his shoes and plopped onto the couch. "Can we have cake now?" he asked with a grin. "Of course," I laughed, wiping my cheeks. "It's your birthday, after all." I lit the 7 little candles again. This time, just the 2 of us. "Make a wish," I said, placing the cake in front of him. He closed his eyes tightly. Then he blew them out and we clapped together like it was the biggest party in the world. "What did you wish for?" I teased. He looked at me, eyes shining. "I wished that we don't have to go to dinners like that again." I hugged him close. "That's one wish I can promise will come true." Later that night, after Owen had fallen asleep clutching his favorite stuffed bear, I sat on the couch alone. The day replayed in my mind. The icy dinner, the cold stares, the cruel words, and then my son standing on that chair. "Thank you all for showing me exactly who you are." His words echoed in my heart. How many times had I silenced myself in that house? How many years had I tiptoed around my mother's judgments, let Haley's snide comments slide, pretended Jack's silence wasn't a choice? Too many. But tonight, Owen had done what I never could. He had drawn a line, not in anger, but in truth. And in doing so, he gave me permission to finally do the same. My phone buzzed, a message from Evan. Lena, what Owen said tonight. Wow, he's an amazing kid. And you're an amazing mom. I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner. If you want, we can talk sometime. Just us. I smiled softly. Maybe some bridges didn't need to be burned completely, but I knew one thing for sure. We wouldn't be sitting at that dinner table again. The next morning, as I packed Owen's lunch for school, he sat at the kitchen table coloring. Mom, he said thoughtfully, do you think Grandma and Cousin Haley will be mad at me? I knelt beside him, looking into his eyes. Maybe, love. But what you said was honest, and sometimes people don't like hearing the truth. That's not your fault. I just wanted them to know we don't have to be like them, he said. Exactly, I smiled. We don't. We choose kindness. We choose love. We choose people who treat us well. He nodded, satisfied. Then he grinned. I'm glad we have cake left, too. Me too, I laughed, ruffling his hair. We'll save a big slice for after school. As I watched him walk to the bus that morning, backpack bouncing, I felt lighter than I had in years. He wasn't just my son. He was my teacher. In 7 short years, he'd learned something it had taken me decades to understand. You don't have to sit at tables where you aren't loved. You don't have to shrink to make others comfortable. You can stand, even on a chair, and speak your truth. And that truth will set you free. In the days that followed, I couldn't stop thinking about that night. The image of Owen standing on that chair, saying those words so clearly. It played in my mind like a movie I couldn't turn off. Thank you all for showing me exactly who you are. I realized something. I had spent my entire life shrinking myself to fit inside that house, at that table, apologizing for who I was, staying silent to keep the peace, teaching my son, without meaning to, that love had to be earned, even from family, but not anymore. Owen had shattered that cycle in one simple moment, and now it was my turn to make sure the lesson stuck. A few days later, my phone buzzed, a message from my mother. You owe us all an apology for that display. You embarrassed this family. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I smiled. For the first time in years, I didn't feel guilt. I didn't feel shame. I felt free. I typed back. We will not be attending any more family dinners. Owen deserves better than to sit where he isn't welcome. And so do I. I hit send. No hesitation. I didn't expect a reply. I didn't need one. Later that afternoon, Evan called. Hey, Lena, I've been thinking about what happened. I should have said something sooner. What Owen did, it was incredible. Thanks, Ev. He's amazing, I said softly. He really is. And you've changed too. In a good way, he added. If you ever want to do dinner sometime, just us, you're both always welcome. Like that, I smiled. Owen would too. One evening, as we were getting ready for bed, Owen crawled onto my lap. Mom, are you mad at Grandma? I wrapped my arms around him. I'm not mad, love. I'm just done trying to make people love us who won't. He nodded thoughtfully. I'm glad we don't have to go back there. Me too, I whispered into his hair. You showed me something really important that night, you know. What? That we can stand up for ourselves, that we can choose where we belong and who we belong with. He grinned. I like choosing with you, Mom. Me too, I whispered again. Over the next few weeks, something changed between us, not in a big, obvious way, but in the quiet, everyday moments. Owen smiled more easily. He hugged me tighter. I laughed more. I slept better. I stopped second-guessing every parenting choice I made. We filled our little apartment with warmth. Movie nights on the couch, pancakes for dinner, walks in the park where Owen would pick wildflowers and say, for our home of love. And when his birthday came around the next year, can we just invite the people who really love us, Mom? He asked. Of course, I smiled. We had cake with Evan and a few close friends. No icy stares, no whispered judgments. Just laughter, hugs, and joy. And as Owen blew out his candles, I thought about that night again. How a small boy had taught me the biggest lesson of my life. You see, sometimes we think family is something we have to endure, no matter how it hurts us. We tell ourselves to keep trying, to be grateful for scraps of love, to forgive what keeps happening. But love, real love, doesn't make you shrink. It doesn't shame you. It doesn't ask you to be someone you're not. It invites you in. It celebrates who you are. It makes room for your happiness. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from the table where you were never truly welcome. So now, when people ask me about my family, I tell them this: I'm building my own, with my son, with the people who choose us and who we choose back. And I don't feel ashamed anymore, because the night my son stood on that chair, he didn't just speak for himself. He spoke for me, for every person who's ever stayed too long where they weren't loved, for every child who deserved better, for every mother learning to choose peace over appearances. I'll never forget it. And every time I see Owen smile now, free and unburdened, I know that night wasn't the end. It was our beginning. If this story spoke to you, if you've ever had to walk away from a table where you weren't loved, know this: you are not alone. You are worthy of love, respect, and peace. And sometimes the strongest thing you can do is choose yourself and those who truly choose you back. I hope Owen's story reminded you of that today. It certainly reminded me. If you found this story meaningful, please take a moment to like the video. It really helps more people find it. And if you'd like to share your own story, or if you just want to send some love to Owen, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories about real life, real courage, and real love. And share this video with someone who might need to hear it today. Thank you so much for being here. Take care of yourself, and remember, sometimes the smallest voices teach us the biggest truths.